How do participatory methods help to explore futures? In this episode, we spoke to Femke Bekius and Peraphan Jittrapirom, both working at the method groups at the Institute for Management Research, Radboud University. Peraphan focuses on sustainable transport systems. In his research, he applies different participatory methods, such as system dynamics modeling and group model building. Femke has a multidisciplinary background in mathematics. Her research focuses on complex decision-making in large organizations, such as the Dutch railway sector.
Welcome. It's really good to have you here and to talk with you about futures and justice and your work, of course, and societal transformations. Let's start with your little anecdote.
Okay, so I wasn't quite sure what the direction of the anecdote. But anyway, here these anecdotes actually about my life in general. Is we think we know where we're going, certainly, right? We have our plan for the future. Initially, I started. Well, I go into the field of civil engineering, and bachelor study and master. That was the plan. That I finished the degree, then go back home to Thailand to kind of help my dad with his company. He has a kind of construction company. Problem is that the company went bankrupt.
Okay, maybe that.
So that changed, right? That's everything. And then after I finished my study, then what to do next? Then I go to consultancy because I already do and I spent time consultancy. Highway engineer, doing the road maintenance, driving up and down highway in the UK, checking all the road pavement, this kind of thing. Then I realized, this is not what I want to do anymore. So I moved to transport engineer. And then it came to me that, why don't I do a PhD? Yeah, because I want to go back to Thailand. It's like, let's go back to Thailand. But I want to bring something tangible back. And then do a PhD. But then, it take longer than I expected. 6 years. And during the time I got married to a Japanese ladies, which then mean I probably harder for me to go back to Thailand. And then from Austria, I moved to here in the Netherlands. So life happened just right in a way. And I think a kind of adaptive planning. It was very much in action here. So I didn't really know about this adaptive planning until I come to Radboud. And it really taught me, when in hindsight, looking back to my life, is that, you don't really, you have some kind of, we might have some expectation about our life in the future. Actually, I found a quote this morning, which I really like, and it's linked to this. And it's read like this, from Daisaku Ikeda, Buddhist philosopher. What will the future be like? No one knows the answer to that question. All we know is that the effects that will appear in the future are all contained in the causes that are made in the present. The important things, therefore, is that we stand up and take action to achieve great objective without allowing ourselves to be distracted or discouraged by immediate difficulties. So for me, it's really, this quote really encapsulates. Given the future, we don't know, but we have some expectation, right? But I think also we have to have that expectation in the present that we do the best we can.
Yeah, and I think this is where we connected when we did the podcast, that we both think about futures and long term and anticipate it, but related to the present. And I like the little sketch of your life that you just do whatever comes on your path without having a certain goal in mind. Does it work for you as well, like that?
Yeah, are you already? This reminds me of there is a song in Dutch, and it translates: "Life is happening while you're busy making other plans."
Yeah, man plans and God laughs.
I think, I'm also not really on one track. Like, never have been on one track. I have a background in mathematics, and when I realized this is becoming way too abstract, I'm in a certain sphere, I cannot explain anymore what kind of mathematics I'm doing. I went for half a year to Rwanda to work there with orphans and in a school and teaching. And when coming back, I was also searching, like, what do I want to do? And I ended up doing a PhD more related to public administration, and I wanted to kind of bridge that with the mathematical background. And that's actually still what I'm aiming to do, to bridge worlds. So not being on one track, I want to become a very good mathematician or, well, maybe a good researcher, but like bridging different worlds. And this is not planned or something maybe you can have as a vision thing. That's my future aim. But how do you do that, and how do you consider in?
Two observations, right, from your little sketches is one, during your personal life, you don't really plan that much, or at least that strongly. You kind of let it happen what happens. While in your work, you're like, hey, let's make a vision and then see how we reach this vision. And a second observation is, and that's less conflicting, that this interdisciplinary background that you both have is, for at least the futures aspect, really good, because it's a fragmented field. Everybody has their own concepts and ways of thinking about it. And we're also here to show what's out there so we can learn from each other and for different disciplines.
That's a very good observation. I think one thing that I find also in our day-to-day, like, we have certain goals, right? I wouldn't call it vision, so to say. I would like goal, specific place where we want to be or to do, right? And I think that's it in a way. Is if we could even just take a moment to reflect, okay, among all of this, where do I actually want to reach? Like, have a vision about our life. My friend asked me about this, and I was like, okay, what is the vision of my life? That's going to be the things that I want to contribute, the places I want to live, the environment. That actually quite hard to imagine for.
So this is a bit of the interaction between the use of futures, like I have this goal or this aim, and then the making of futures. Okay, I do this action. Where does it go to? What I found interesting in your work both, and I was wondering how you did that, because the previous interview that we had, it was said that there was one vision and they were going to work with one vision and different stakeholders, and we were both a bit surprised and say, hey, but what about plural visions? And then that's just something that they didn't do. And in your work, I read that you do give space for different visions, different stakeholders.
I think that kind of a multiple future, that's what we try to, I think, at least.
Yeah, I think it very much also relates to the different perspectives that the multiple stakeholders have on the problem or the future where you want to go. And I think that's something that, to me, it sometimes was like, okay, in mathematics, we're often optimizing. We're trying to find the optimal solution, but the optimal solution for every stakeholder is different. So there is not one, there are multiple, optimal ways. So there are multiple futures where they want to go. And there are also multiple ways in how to get to these futures. So this is really, I think, something that somehow is integrated in how I use models and how I do research. The assumption, or I pre-assume, or how do you say it, that all these stakeholders have a different view on the problem, a different perspective, a different aim, and some things might overlap, of course, and it's also needed in a way to get these actors maybe reaching consensus, but they start from a different perspective. And I think what is powerful in the methods that we use is that we try to bring these perspectives together and see whether we can maybe come to a more overarching perspective and maybe formulate a vision. But in principle, they start with a different future.
But couldn't these different visions and goals that they have also be contradicting?
Sure, they are.
Yeah. So how do you deal with this?
Well, I think sometimes even also explicating that you have a conflicting aim is, insightful. So I use game theory models, which is also often about conflict. So you can model the different objectives and preferences of the actors and actually show, if you formalize it as such, then you want this outcome and you want this outcome. But that's not going to work if we both have to transform the system towards a more sustainable system, because then we are these paths will not coincide. And maybe in some situation it can be. So actually you can define a path where these conflicting interests can be aligned. Yeah, but I think the first thing is realizing that these conflicts are there, and having people at the same place and speaking out to each other. Well, we are on these different paths is already one step ahead.
And hidden conflicts is even actually more, I think, can be hinder the progress, because you don't know one aware until actually you would get down to do something. It's actually, I didn't know that actually you have this preference that's not the same as others. So I think in surfacing that, like you said, is actually make it.
But that's really interesting, right? I mean, because it's also about, indeed, these conflicts are there and they are hidden. So can you maybe also reflect on your experiences with stakeholders? Were there any moments where you thought, whoa, this is how stakeholders reacted to this conflict? How do they deal with this?
Yeah, I think there was a workshop that we both of us present. I think I was like kind of supporting at the back, and then I think Femke was doing the facilitation in the group in Southwest Den Haag. Remember, there was one stakeholder who had a very strong view about I think housing issue or something, that he actually really stood up, kind of give up. I think he was dissatisfied about the way, not about the workshop, but I think by talking about vision and where he want, or the group wanted to be in the future.
And then what happens?
I think somehow he went it out. If I agree.
Yeah, I think we try to address it and let him explain his perspective and how he looked at it. And I think there was also reaction from other stakeholders, and it was not resolved or anything. We didn't could address it there, because it was indeed about where houses were built and how many houses were built. But it got a place in the workshop, and it also got a place in formulating all these measures and activities that they were thinking about.
But when because we had this also in our project about energy transition in neighborhoods, where you then have these citizens who are rightfully very angry and very scared. And as a researcher, I always feel very helpless and stupid in these moments, because you basically can't do anything. Do you?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the dilemmas that I also said. Are we? Because, I believe or I assume, but I really would like to prove that does it actually make sense to put these conflicts or put this where the difficulties are, to put a spot on it in a way, or should people just continue and do, and then it will resolve it one way or another. But I think by also in the methods that we use, they allow us to put it in a slightly different perspective. So I mean, if you would just sit in a large meeting with all these different stakeholders and you would give turns in talking, then it doesn't become so explicit. So you're not specifying what is your perspective on this aspect, what is your point, what is your main issue, what do you see as the worst outcome. And the moment that you start making these things explicit, they also start understanding each other perspective. And I think that's the starting point for getting somewhere, if you understand where the other person is coming.
So making it explicit is actually important, because I think also from a justice perspective, one of the dangers is that, and there I think justice and futures comes together, everyone talks about justice in the future essentially, but not explicitly. It remains implicit, and therefore we also reproduce the inequalities and injustice that we currently have, because we all kind of muddle through, and it should be practical and should be efficient, and we need to solve the issue now. So I think making it explicit is really important,
because being practical and being efficient is already a future justice thing. Yeah, absolutely. I was wondering, when you want to make explicit these implicit justice notions and futures, I find it difficult to think about questions or stuff to talk about that you do talk about it, but not in an explicit way. Because if you ask hey, what do you think about the future? People are just close down. And I think this game method, what you do, is really helpful for that. Do you have some tips or some really good things that we could use when you want to talk about these implicit justice futures aspects?
So what I use in my work is a set of game theory models that are a way to characterize decision making. So these games, they consist of actors, of actions, of preferences, of outcomes.
References is a future.
Yeah, and outcomes also are futures. So I don't talk about futures. So now if you ask me for this, I was like, futures.
I don't do anything with futures.
And long term. So in a way, you encapsulate it differently. And then you start from, okay, well, we have a decision or a challenge in the future. And who are the actors involved? And what do these actors want? And what do you see as a long-term, what do you see as an outcome of this process by them? And who do you think need to be involved? And what is an outcome that you really don't want? And then, you start kind of structuring it as we call it games now, but very much often I don't talk about games because people think they're going to play something. Yeah. Because I'm saying this decision-making situation, or we're talking about this mechanism or the dynamics or something. And this, gives somehow a different language to them, thinking about future and thinking about what can happen. And they often use also what has happened in the past with the experience.
That's what I wanted to ask you, because it seems like a very agency-focused thing. Like the actors come together and they do something, they think about the future. But there are also current structures in place, institutions, responsibilities, regulations, capacities, that, I mean, I can think about the nicest future, but then I look at reality and I'm saying I have no capacity to actually go there. Do you take this with you on the games, or is this not part of it?
Yeah. And I also think actually in the vision-making exercise, we make that very explicit, because often the result is like, okay, we have a vision somewhere 2060 or 70, and then, government has to do this. Government has to do this. Municipality has to do this. And we do this with citizens. And then actually we reformulated at some point also our question saying, what can you do at this moment in time, and what can others do? And that's also that also relates again to the game theory models. You think not only from your own perspective, but you explicitly take the perspective of others involved in the problem.
Mm-hmm. Are there people sometimes involved who cannot do anything? They have no capacity to change or do something?
I think they always can do something, even small things. And you should also not underestimate the people who are not having, for example, decision power or not having much capacity, but they can complicate the decision-making at the end. So they are the chaos players, so to say.
Can you give an example?
I would like to be a chaos
I think Femke would be a chaos player. Yeah, she would definitely be a chaos player.
So there might be smaller organizations that have to be on board to get the entire process running, to change the system, or to, I don't know, I'm thinking of these railway examples that I have been in, where you have these smaller transport companies that, well, they cannot really say from the big data are not really having a great power in the decision making, but in the end they can very much relate it because they have just to be on board. So they can delay the process towards the end. They can, for example, say, well, we need more time, or we don't have the money, and then the government has to give them money. You see this, so they can complicate the process. And this actually happens in this long-term decision-making.
This kind of method, I think, is also make us aware that we need everyone on board. Everyone have a role. So therefore, the inclusiveness of the process is really important. Right? I think not only for now, but also the future. So in that case, the role or the power of the stakeholder change over time. I think particularly with the long-term plan. Right? I think it's all that then is meaning that it makes us appreciate, I think, more that we need to value all the stakeholders involved, not just the one that have the important role.
So it's an interesting pattern that you see, that I also see in the research I'm doing with using different terms, but it's the same thing. Like we had done in the energy transition, they wanted to connect the energy neutral goal to the rest, the regional energy strategy. And they had to speed up the process because they wouldn't reach the energy neutral thing. And then what happened is they excluded the people who had no formal responsibility because they would delay the process. And by doing this, they included only certain people, but they only took into account the futures that they anticipate. And by doing this, you don't include other futures that might become important or maybe not, but are still important for people who are not included. So you see the same thing as you said, that you need to include everyone, might be a bit too much, but include several perspectives to create some kind of unity.
And I think also this might backfire if you exclude them. They will at some point, delay the process even further. Yeah. So you exclude them because you think they will delay, but that they will delay.
But isn't this also really difficult? Because I mean, everything's about, we include everyone and bring everyone on the table. I'm not sure everyone wants to be on the table. No, I don't think even if they want to be, they might not be able to because they have 5 jobs, they have other responsibilities. So I mean, it's nice on paper to want to include everyone, but in practice, I think also our research, it's really difficult. So do you have any tricks how you get everyone on the table?
No, I mean, it's more like you already said, everyone have their own priority at certain stage, right? At this stage, maybe not, but at least they're kept informed, or they know about, or actually at least the process is open for them to contribute in somehow.
Yeah, so see the dynamic of the policy process and be open for people to.
And not like you are saying excluding them from the rest. Yeah. But no, being aware, okay, we are now continuing with this process, but these actors also have an important perspective that we somehow need to include. And then, indeed, probably we're not sitting all together 3 days in a workshop session. But at least during that workshop session, these players or actors that are not there are also on the whiteboard or wherever.
Do you miss people in the process? Do you say, okay, we have this game and it's all nice and brilliant and it's working very well, but still we miss certain groups, like the silent discourses?
Always. I think that, like Femke said, I think we cannot always, in all Mary already said as well, we cannot always include everyone, and everyone have priority. The availability is different. So sometimes we also miss different people in the workshop that we do recently. Also, we missed a few.
But now the question is, what do we do, right? We just say, well, it's really difficult, we can't do it. Let's continue. Yeah. Or are we actually saying, okay, this is a problem that we cannot neglect.
Yeah. No, I think we should not neglect. We had a nice idea what you couldn't do. That was walking with people through the area where they live to see whether they could, somehow imagine how they would have it look like. So really walking through the area and saying like, well, I would actually want to have a very big tree here or something like in the Southwest The Hague. That would have been a great thing that we couldn't do. But we are in a project with the municipality of Nijmegen right now, where we will have citizens also be included in the workshop. But this is always, it's really difficult. And we cannot find them because, we are not in these, living in these areas. So then there are people from the municipality who know the people living and working in these areas, but they have to put a lot of effort in. So now we have 7 citizens for next week, and they're like, oh, great. They also actually are citizens with different backgrounds, because not every citizen is, of course, representing their citizens. But there are like...
And just walking around and start talking to people. That's what we also did in a Viet project. Which is, we joked around about buying a dog, or because actually just hang around there all.
Actually, should live there, or we should be there, and also give financial compensation. Because that, and also have daycare, these kind of things. If you want to involve people, then make sure that you take care of the kids for these 2 hours. Then people can come. But it requires a completely different also, so there's a lot of time that goes into finding the right people for your sessions.
Yeah, and also the question is, particularly when it comes to citizens, And maybe that's a little bit outside the box, but do you really need to include them every time? Is it really that you, depending on your topic, do you really need this? Or is it sometimes also just the responsibility of the government to take care of certain things?
Yeah.
So like what? Energy comes out of the plug. I don't care. I don't care where it's coming from. Water, it's running, it's clean. I assume it's there. I don't care. So I'm sometimes wondering if it's also such sort of obsession by researchers that we need to participate, which also transfers some of the responsibility to others. So maybe we should also have a discussion about who's responsible.
Yeah, and also make
This is outside the box, right? This is talk about responsibility.
But giving the responsibility might also influence the change.
Of course.
So if you have been involved in policy making about sustainable transport, then you might actually also often be more sustainable in taking transport.
Yeah.
Or I don't know.
And if clean water just comes out of the tap, you might not be stimulated to maybe don't use so much.
That's the rebound effect that we see quite often, that it's that you actually then consume more.
We also facing a bit of a societal challenges now, like with climate change and all. I think it can be felt right now in Thailand. Is flooding really badly, particularly in my hometown. There's a never before flooding this high and this fast. So it's actually getting more severe as we progressing on. I think the citizen or people in general, I'm sure they're concerned about this, right? And then they want maybe something to do or something that they can contribute to. So I think in that sense, that as we're facing more and more like societal challenge, people want to do something more, want to be involving something to actually take action.
Because they see it in the present around them. This future might be on their
And you see the consequences of.
Yeah, I would really please talk about the concept of durability. I wrote down the concept of durability. Because I think it's cool. In the research of anticipation, there's this use and making of futures, and the use of futures is kind of okayish. There are the expectations, and there are desired futures, and there are goals, and there are undesired futures. So we can kind of work with that. But with this making of futures, like every action that we do have consequences, and we cannot see what kind of consequences it might have beforehand. It's really difficult, and I'm also struggling how to work with this. And then I read the concept of durability, and I thought, hey, this is cool. Did you see this concept in this broader view as well, or you just work with it and then you think, hey, this is some kind of making of futures, and where do you get it from, this concept?
Yeah, so the idea actually came. Really, I look at decision-making processes and how these things evolve. And especially if you're talking about a large infrastructure systems, I mean, these decisions are long-term and far in the future. But decisions need to be taken now because it takes time before things get implemented. But also, the world is changing. It's all dynamic. So we thought of the concept of decisions, that they evolve over time. Decisions evolve over time. And so we got this concept of durability from ecology, that species evolve over time. Well, decisions also evolve over time. And it's very hard to assess decisions because you can look at the cost and the benefits and all these kind of things, but you really want to quantify it. And actually, I am not that much interested in, the technical part, but more on the actor part. So what do actors feel about this decision? So are they agreeing with the decision, yes or no? And the idea of durability is actually saying, a decision is durable at this moment in time when both the long-term and the short-term aspects are aligned among all the actors involved. So the decision aligns with the actor's long-term idea of that decision, and there are concrete short-term steps in how to reach that decision. And then we call it a durable decision. But sometimes there are agreements about this long-term, but the short-term steps are completely unclear. So we call it potentially durable, because these short-term steps should be there. And the same, if there are short-term steps but no long-term aligned aim, then it's fragile.
Okay.
We call it a fragile decision because on the short term, apparently these actors are aligned, but, well, will this actually be on the long term? We don't know. And then we have non-durable decisions where it's not on the short term and not on the long term. So apparently actors are not aligned.
It's exceptionally cool that you take something from ecology and then put it into planning. So this is what future studies should do more often. So I'm really happy. But you,
as a biologist, I'm worried about this translating things from ecology into the thing. But I do see it here. I'm wondering, does this concept of durability, does it clash with the concept of adaptive planning that you mentioned before? Or how do they two relate to each other?
That's a good question.
yeah, deep as the ocean.
Yeah. I think it doesn't need to be. I think the nice thing of this concept is that we allow it to change over time. So we say something about the decision's durability at this moment in time, but in a year it can be different because also these actors change. The context change. So maybe this long-term aim is not anymore there. We have a different future in mind.
There will be.
And I think the concept of adaptivity or adapting is that aligns with that, but maybe you can say something.
I can try.
More deeper.
Yeah, this is going to be very abstract there because I never thought about this before actually. Because but that's why I'm here. Let's imagine you have three stakeholders all trying to go to a long-term goal, which is sustainable future of something like sustainable transport, so to say. And then they are aligning short-term and long-term at the start. But then as they move toward that, there might be some certain trends or events that impact internal organization or external order. Then they need to change that. But to maintain that alignment, I don't think there's only one status. I don't know. It's just my abstract thinking. That one status that they're allowed to stay the same. There should be also the room for renewal that allow them to move within this kind of, so to say, the space.
When we talk with practitioners from the real world in some projects, I also have the feeling that they're scared in the sense, and that they feel like, we are accountable for this. This is our responsibilities. We need to do this. We can't look outside because what happens if people are against this? So I feel that there's a lot of fear and also mistrust, and not necessarily mistrust, they do something wrong, but if we lose control, then we are accountable and people will come to us. Do you see this as well?
This accountability colonizes the future.
Do you feel this when you work with stakeholders, that there's also a certain, well, maybe not fear, but hesitance to think outside the box and to think long?
Yeah,
I find it difficult. And as a consequence, focus on what's happening now and ad hoc solve. So it's not the water and the energy companies are not working together. They solve the things now, but they don't think, where should we be in 20-something far away? And what should we do now? Because they are worried about the things that they decide now and that it will have negative consequences for things that we...
I think it's not that they don't want to think about it. I think they need the vocabulary to, in a structured way, talk about it. And I think that's what you provide, because they have no language to put it in your mandate. So as soon as they know a bit more words to think about a structured way, to think in a structured way about the future, this might come. So this vocabulary is what we mentioned, the future literacy.
But I think this is really the important point. The future literacy is first step to have the vocabulary to talk about it. But then it's also the questions: do you have the structure and the system you are operating in, and how far do you? And how far does it even allow you to make the steps to get to your future, to think about your future, or to start making your future? And its mandate, its power, its capacity.
But there are all these kind of things that restrict us exactly going to certain future, because every 4 years you have to vote again. Yeah, but this really restricts the province in making decisions about a sustainable railway transport system. Yeah. Because, the person now at this place is not so fan of sustainability. So these 4 years we have to sit back and then wait. But the time is, ticking.
Yeah.
What I would like to have mentioned in the video later on is this hub and spoke, I think you call it, game. Yeah, because I think it's very cool. Can you say something about it and then maybe use the use and making of futures distinction?
Yeah. Well, the hub spoke is actually a public administration concept that I took because I observed it a lot in complex decision-making process, where you have one hub who is actually not necessarily hierarchical, more powerful than the other actors, but it's some kind of the coordinating actor in a decision-making process. And what it tends to do is separately with all the other actors, we call them spokes, negotiate about the decision.
But also about the future they were.
Yeah, so where they want to go. So the typical example is that this hub wants to buy a new piece of land and it wants to build new houses, something there, but there is a farmer still there and it needs a construction company and it needs all type of other actors to be involved, and it needs to negotiate about the price, etc. But because it does it spoke by spoke, these spokes also among each other start strategically thinking and discussing among each other. And then once you have had all the spokes, it comes back to the first spoke and says, yeah, well, I heard you have given this person more money or whatever. I also want more. So it's a very long game. So it delays a lot, but a lot of processes are organized as such. So there is one program coordinator who has to talk to all the different actors, and it does it separately. And it focuses on this own plan of the hub. So the hub has its plan of shaking something or building something.
Yeah, I think this is nice because there is a plurality of futures because people can have their own goal in mind. Yeah,
and it's very much dependent on the hub. So if the hub is more open-minded for all these futures of these others, then this will probably go much faster. Or if the hub thinks, well, let's not do this separately, but let them bring them together or a large part together at the table. And maybe then we're moving it to a different game, but maybe also put some other issues at the table. Because, well, this hub has an ID, but for example, one actor might not be so interested in that ID, but he might be interested in something else. So if you then add new issues to the table and make the solution space is a bit broader, then we turn and make it into a multi-issue game.
And how do you use this game? Do you really play it with actors that have a specific plan, or is it more a theoretical, let's come all together and think about it?
Yeah, you can do different things. So I have analyzed decision-making processes like with doing interviews and observations and then coding all these interviews and really descriptively finding out that this game was at play. That's one way. But I would like to give it back to the stakeholders involved. So we study the process and we give it back, or I actually give the games in a certain form to these people and say, find out which game you're in. Because all these games have certain characteristics. So I have some kind of a tool that they can use and they can find out which game they are in. And if they realize they're in the hub-spoke game, they also, who are the actors in this game? And what are their incentives? What are the different outcomes? What are the actions? And you could play it by giving them different roles, but usually already finding out what game you're in and finding out how this game actually works, and also thinking, how is the future going to look like as we would continue it now? Maybe they found out one of the spokes, we didn't see them as spoke, and we have not even involved them in the process. So we should ask this spoke as well. Or, oh my God, if we're going to play this game, it's going to take so long. We should change this game. We don't want to be in this game. So
I wasn't saying on the note from the system and its structural injustices, and it's all capitalism and food unhappiness. I think you gave me hope. So what I took away from this, it's actually worthwhile to talk to people, and
be genuinely interested
in them. And I think it's good to bring people together and to make, and I think you have the tools and the methods to make these things that remain explicit when it comes to futures, but also to justice and inequalities, to make them explicit. And then we need to figure out what we do with once they are explicit. But I think making them explicit is a first step.
You have very cool tools.
To think changing mental map. I think as well, we talk about literacy and also about the governance part, right? That's, I think, also the mental map of people that, recognize, okay, beside this kind of silo, there's also the other things that, and by bringing other people together, I think to have that dialogue, at least we allow them to exchange or learn from each other.
So, thank you
so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us. It was really nice. I had fun.
And new research.
And new
Yeah, new
things
things come out.